Yeah, so I think with this very interesting and amazing results that's been coming up, Novo Nordisk has actually surpassed LVMH as the most valuable company in Europe recently. So, is it the case that obesity drugs are becoming, more in demand than luxury bags now? Hi everyone, and welcome to the Curious Investor, Saxo's video series where we dive into the latest topics which are driving the investment markets. My name is Fiona, and I'm here in the Singapore office with Charu, our market strategist. And today it's in September 2023, so we'll be discussing about the latest billion-dollar revolution which has been fighting obesity. Yes, so it's a very exciting topic today. And I think with many different kinds of weight loss strategies popping up over the past few years, with intermittent fasting, dieting, supplements, liposuction, even. This is a very interesting topic that I think a lot of people has actually been discussing even in our personal lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe we can actually bring a bit more light on this topic as well.
Absolutely, Fiona. I mean, obesity is a problem that has struck so many people. It has so many side effects as well. So, so many further complications that come out of it. And I think it's a huge factor for, high cases of depression these days. There's also a huge amount of money that is being spent on all those treatments that you mentioned. But yeah, we've seen some breakthrough drugs coming in the market now, which can really change the game. So I think it will be really exciting to talk about that today.
Yes, indeed, there's been so much excitement about this new class of drugs that's been helping patients to shed dozens of pounds with far lower risk. Yeah, so Novo Nordisk, they launched Wegovy, which is actually developed to tackle obesity, but at the same time, they're able to even reduce heart attack as well as stroke. Yeah, so I think with this very interesting and amazing results that's been coming up, Novo Nordisk has actually surpassed LVMH as the most valuable company in Europe recently. So, is it the case that obesity drugs are becoming, more in demand than luxury bags now?
I mean, yes, certainly it is a whole new category, So we're starting from a very low base, and this is a whole new segment that has come up in the pharmaceutical industry now. In fact, some analysts are estimating that it could be an industry of the size of about $100 billion in about a decade from now. And Novo Nordisk is certainly the pioneer in that industry. It is the first one to get approval for an obesity treatment drug, Wegovy, as you said that. And investors are getting a lot excited about the potential for Novo Nordisk to capture a huge market share of this new and upcoming industry as well.
Yeah, and I think because the demand has been so high in the US, it's even hard for them to meet their expansion targets in Europe as well.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, no, certainly. And I think one of the bigger triggers for that really was the study that was the results came out in August, and it kind of showed, like what you mentioned, right, that although it is a drug that is tackling obesity, it is approved for obesity, but it is also shown to be reducing the incidence of cardiovascular diseases. Now, we certainly know that obesity and cardiovascular diseases could have some amount of linkage, but a drug which is potentially showing success with weight loss, also reducing the incidence of a heart attack, that certainly is a huge step, right? And that is also a huge criteria. For the results have been so good that they were the best case scenarios for most analysts, and it has increased the likelihood that the drug can get reimbursement from the insurance companies or national health organizations. So it certainly becomes a lot more affordable as well, and that again increases the likelihood of the number of people that can potentially use it, right? So certainly, I think a lot of excitement there, and then there's a lot of research that is still going on in the background. Now today, it is shown to be reducing the risk of cardiovascular issues, and there could be more research, and we could be addressing some more health issues, chronic illnesses as well in the future. If for example, it is shown to have any kind of an impact on treatment of cancer as well, then we could just simply see the demand multiplying at a very fast pace.
Yes, and as we discussed, this drug is very in high demand in the US, and that's because obesity is in fact one of the leading causes of death in the US. So I think with this drug, it's looking very promising. Yep, and in fact, this week, Novo Nordisk has been one of the hottest investments this year, coming up to over 40% year to date already.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think if you look at the earnings, the earnings multiple, which is they're actually currently at a 44.
Okay.
Yeah, so that could actually be a deterrent for some investors who think that it's a little bit too expensive. But if we do look at the potential of Wegovy and how that could be a catalyst for Novo Nordisk to really perform even better over the long term,
Yeah.
I think that could be something that buy and hold investors could actually consider in their portfolio as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something like, we've discussed a lot about artificial intelligence and the valuation of Nvidia as a result as well. But when you are in this new space, which has this potential of growing from zero to something which is of a very high magnitude, then certainly, those earnings multiples are something that investors start to look beyond at some point, because of just the massive amounts of potential. And Novo Nordisk, as we discussed, it has the first mover advantage there. It was actually the whole thing started with their diabetes drugs. Saxenda was one of their first diabetes drugs, and then there was Ozempic. So all of these drugs, they actually mimic the natural GLP-1 hormone, which actually lowers the blood sugar levels. So it suppresses the chemicals that lead to more hunger. So they're both based on those hormones. They have different active ingredients. And then Wegovy was launched in 2021 with the same active ingredient as that in Ozempic, but with a significantly higher dosage. And then obviously it was proved to have success with obesity. And actually Wegovy is the only drug which is also seen to have success with cardiovascular outcomes as well. Certainly, there are a lot of other GLP-1 drugs as well in the market. For instance, if you consider, Eli Lilly, which is a U.S. pharmaceutical company, their drug Mounjaro. That is also, similar. It is mimicking a natural GLP-1 hormone. It has a different active ingredient again, but it has obviously been approved as well for diabetes. And in fact, the success of Eli Lilly's drug in weight loss is also seen to be overtaking that of Wegovy's. But so far, it's not been approved. It might be approved this year or next year for weight loss as well. So I think, there are a lot of players in the market that could be considered if investors want to ride this wave as well. There's also actually a class of oral GLP-1s, So most of these drugs that we just talked about, Wegovy and Mounjaro, they have to be injected through a pen. But there is a lot of research going on in the oral GLP-1 space as well. Again, I think Novo Nordisk is leading that research as well. But players like Eli Lilly, players like Pfizer are also doing research in coming up with these oral GLP-1s. And if they seem to have success with obesity treatment, and more so now, I think the standards have been raised by Wegovy with its success on the cardiovascular front as well. If we do see them getting on that stage and getting approved for reimbursements, I think that is really one of the biggest barriers in this industry. If they also get approved for reimbursement, then certainly there are a lot of players that are willing to ride this wave. And I guess it's going to be hard to pick one, and it will be really determined by supply. There's enough demand. I think the market's going to be large enough for multiple players to operate as well. If Wegovy does get reimbursement, it could be, start getting prescribed by physicians and stuff. So it could seem to be taking up that market share, but if it is not able to meet the supplies in the long run, but there are other drugs that have better supplies, then they could even take over Wegovy's success.
Yeah, so as you said, there's a lot of players in the pharmaceutical space that's popping up. So it seems like there's something big that's going to come, and as I think investors, they should be taking note of this as well. Right? Yes. So, what are the other industries that you think could be impacted by this growth in the pharmaceutical space, either positively or negatively?
Yeah, I mean, to think about it negatively, there's a lot of industry, especially in the food, beverage side, restaurants, if that could be, affected. If you, there are again, there are some analyst estimates that are saying that about 7% of the U.S. population could be using these drugs by about 2035. If that happens, what do these drugs do? Like we discussed, right? They suppress hunger. So there are again some research that says that there could be a 20 to 30% drop in hunger for people who are taking these drugs, and that certainly means that cravings could come to an end. So all your burgers and pizzas and pastas, those kind of players could be affected. Think McDonald's, think Campbell's Soup, think KFC. All these players could see reduced demand. Restaurants as well, but I do think restaurants at least have a choice of offering healthier meals. So I think they may be able to innovate and offset some of the pressures, but I think it's very hard to innovate if you are selling donuts or if you're selling pizzas. So I think those are some of the sectors. And then also probably I've heard some people talk about the impact on liquor and the demand for alcohol, because again, people who are on these drugs, they are seem to be having an aversion to alcohol as well. And even if they still have an alcohol for social drinking purposes, you have one glass of beer and then you feel very full. So again, yeah, there could be some impact on your Coca-Colas as well as your alcoholic drinks as well. And just to look beyond, I would say food and beverage. There's also this medical device industry. There are some procedures, invasive procedures, surgeries that are also currently being done. Obviously, in extreme cases, but in some of the cases to address those obesity concerns. And there were some reports that said that those demands for medical devices could slow down as well. But again, I would think this is a very long-term phenomena, and I mean, also, I mean, the other side of the equation really is that if you have these drugs available, they can be prescribed, they're covered by your insurance. People may become more careless as well. They may exercise less, so the overall incidence of obesity could also go up. So that that in a way means that some people may still require those surgeries or things like that. So I think it's just a very long-term impact that we could see. But certainly, I think a shift towards healthier meals is always a good option.
Yes, certainly. But I think one thing on many people's minds as to all these obesity drugs is, are they truly safe? Are there any side effects, or are there going to be any other reasons that could delay its reimbursements, which
Yeah.
makes it more affordable for people? Yeah. So yeah, what do you think is if there's any side effects or
Yeah,
such?
I mean, I've read of some of the common side effects like nausea, vomiting, and there are also reasons to believe that it should not be prescribed in people who have psychiatric issues or gastro issues. And so certainly, I mean, safety concerns are a big thing that have to be taken into account before this drug really gets reimbursement. But overall, I think the rhetoric right now still is that the incidence of these side effects is still pretty low, and these drugs are still considered to be safer than surgery. So yeah, I mean, we have to really see how that rhetoric really develops from here. But yeah, that's the broad theme that's playing on right now. But I think some of the other factors that really kind of will rule the fact that whether these become the next big thing or not will be supply, as we already discussed. Will also be the cost. It's the cost is estimated to be upwards of $10,000 per year. So it certainly, unless it is covered by your insurance provider, it certainly remains very expensive for an average American or any other person as well to kind of afford it. And I think one of the other key researches that is going on is about how long do people have to stay on that drug. And once you stop taking it, does the weight come back? So I think, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of unanswered questions on this. But then again, those are the kind of industries that bring a huge investment potential as well.
Yes, and I think if they can address all of these issues as well, then I think it can really allow them to unlock their full market potential.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so this might not be a mainstream view, but I think it's time for us to actually look at obesity as more of a serious health condition because of how much it can actually increase the risk for many other diseases, and these diseases are inclusive of diabetes, even increased risk for cancer, hypertension, heart attacks, etc. So it really is something that we should be looking at more seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at it in terms of how much of a loss of productivity we have because of these diseases, not just obesity, but all the side illnesses that come along with it, there are estimates that suggest that it actually costs about 2% of global GDP annually. Because of all the sick days, disabilities, and illnesses, and stuff like that. So, certainly, I mean, if there is a more, responsible treatment for obesity, it can address these other side effects as well. Then I think it is a possibility that we can offset some of that demographic drag that especially coming in the developed world over the next several decades, right? And overall improve the productivity of the society as well.
Yeah. So this is definitely a space to watch. Yeah, and it's good to see that on the Saxo's platform as well, we do have many of these new age pharmaceutical companies that you can actually invest in. So for example, Novo Nordisk, AbbVie, Eli Lilly, Johnson & Johnson as well. Yeah, so to find out more about all these thought-provoking investment ideas, you can log into the Saxo platform and go into the research tab to see more inspiration for this. Yeah, so if you actually enjoyed today's video, please give us a like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.